This is CNBC Reports. At the end of the day, your first look at tomorrow.
More evidence of the fight. A letter published by an angry former AIG employee who was given a hefty bonus. It was printed for all the world to see in today's New York Times. It is from Jake DeSantis, who worked for AIG for more than a decade. He was awarded a $740,000 bonus. He is angry. The hardworking people in profitable AIG units that had nothing to do with the collapse were not defended when CEO Ed Liddy testified before Congress last week. DeSantis writes, "We in the financial products unit have been betrayed by AIG and are being unfairly persecuted by elected officials. In response, I will leave the company and donate my entire post-tax retention payment to those suffering from the global economic downturn. I take this action after 11 years of dedicated, honorable service to AIG. I can no longer effectively perform my duties in this dysfunctional environment," he writes, "nor am I being paid to do so. I worked for an annual salary of $1 out of a sense of duty to the company and to public officials who have come to AIG's aid. Having now been let down by both, I can no longer justify spending 10, 12, 14 hours a day away from my family for the benefit of those who have let me down."
Okay, and this just in, AIG executives in Europe argue they should not have to return their bonuses, and some feel the pressure to do so tantamount to blackmail. Okay, let's bring in Peter Flaherty, president of National Legal and Policy Center. Okay, sir, you certainly have no sympathy for this man. You were quite turned off by this letter, as was I.
No, I thought it was really whiny. And Jake DeSantis still doesn't get it. He still thinks he's keeping the money and he's going to give it to charity. That defeats the purpose of the whole initiative to get the money back. The point is, he's not a victim. It's the taxpayers that are victims. And if Mr. DeSantis is a serious person, he should give back the money to the company to reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
Jeff Mackey, I have an issue with this not me, them. You work for a company, okay? The company lost hundreds of billions of dollars. My taxpayer money is bailing you out. Oh, you're a big shot. You're giving my money to charity? You shouldn't be able to decide what to do with my money.
Because Congress is going to violate every codicil of the Constitution to steal it back, to claw it back, in the angry words that we're using, the angry verbiage that is taken on this issue. And we're breaking every law that we stand for. We're basically defeating the people who are successful.
Well, Jeff, that's not the issue. Look,
that is the issue. The issue is these people,
no one holds a brief
bonus
for the circus on Capitol Hill.
Peter, go ahead.
You have Charles Rangel, who evaded taxes on rental income on a Dominican Republican beach house. He cheated on his D.C. property taxes by improperly claiming a homestead exemption. And he led a Citigroup-funded junket to the Caribbean after the TARP had passed. I hold no brief for that circus. It's the bill to close the barn door after the horses escaped. But in the case of AIG, none of these people would have jobs if the taxpayer didn't bail them out 4 times. If the company had simply entered bankruptcy, a bankruptcy judge most certainly would have put aside these contracts. So it's a special situation. And I have no problem with populism. What I have a problem with is this fake populism. Obama gets everyone charging up the hill and then says, oh, never mind.
Okay, so let's talk about fake populism. Let's talk about $160 million versus the size of the bailout as a whole, either how it relates to AIG or TARP in general. We're talking about a spit in the Atlantic Ocean.
Jeff, you don't understand. You don't understand. Peter, Jeff, the fact that you quantify it that way shows me you missed the point completely. There is populist rage here, okay? And it's very, 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 very simple.
And it's being stoked.
And that's fine. And you can have rage at those bonuses. That's fine. But you cannot allow the congressmen out there, people in Washington, to get away with it either. There should be a fair share of anger towards them in terms of giving over that money without putting any strings attached. Mr. DeSantis makes a very good point in this letter, saying essentially that they had 6 months to review. These contracts were in place for 6 months.
Mr. DeSantis is bailing.
And nobody took a look at those contracts 5 months ago.
I want to read an interesting quote, and this is from Megan McArdle from Atlantic Monthly, and she was actually supporting his I care about me, I don't care about the company. He says, perhaps there's some long-lost period in American history where people identified so thoroughly with the corporations who employed them that they treated their employers' ethical obligations, its best interests, as identical with their own, willingly incinerated their careers at the altar of failing firms. But if so, thank God it's over. That's not patriotic. It's creepy.
You know who did that, Donnie? The people who built the Empire State Building worked themselves out of a job, just like the AIG guys are. They basically completed the Empire State Building in record time, and they had staring at them at the other end of that job the Great Depression. They had no job going forward. Everyone who leaves AIG has AIG in scarlet letters across the front of their pinstripe. They will never work again in this town or any other town.
Jeff Mackey,
well, that's not true.
Peter, excuse me 1 second, I'll bring you
the rest of his life.
Jeff, let me ask you a question. Let's say we start a company called Mackey Deutsch. Actually, let's call it Deutsch Mackey, okay?
Yeah, fair enough.
And we have a year where everybody works really hard around the clock, well intended, and we lose $1 million, okay? And then I have one employee that comes into me and says, I don't care that our company lost $1 million. I did this. I want my shake or I'm going. I want that guy out the door. That's not a company. That's not a team. So this is like a joke with this. Well, it's not me, it's them. And by the way, everybody is anonymous who is involved with this. They've all left the company. There still hasn't been one person that's in any way responsible for this institution going in the ground.
The over-under on how long these guys stay anonymous is about 3 days before they leak it to the press to grandstand, which is what this is all about.
Well, look, all this is beside the point. This
grandstanding.
anger directed at these bonuses is a proxy anger by the American people about this whole bailout culture. There's a feeling that you can fail at a very high level and be bailed out. Look at Geithner's new plan for the toxic assets. I call it the Obama hedge fund bailout. There's people who are going to make a lot of money off this, and the taxpayer is going to assume the risk.
And you're exactly right. What I'm saying is that relative to the hedge fund bailout, this is nothing. We are being outraged about exactly the wrong thing. We are arguing over $160 million.
No, Jeff, but the whole AIG thing, $175 billion of taxpayers' money went in, and it was actually a bailout for their counterparties.
Peter, let me ask you a question.
They're not giving up their bonuses at Goldman Sachs, the biggest domestic
Absolutely
recipient
agree with you.
Peter, let me ask you a question.
Money.
Peter, let me ask you a question. And unfortunately, the newest plan for the toxic asset is imperfect, but I think it's a good plan. The taxpayers do shoulder too much of the risk. But listen to me, Peter, let me finish. But in reality, I don't know what the alternative is. If we don't clean up these balance sheets, nothing's going. So we can't bite off our nose to spite our face. At some point, we've got to get out of our ideology and start to do what's right and what's going to fix things.
Well, we keep getting backed against the wall, and we're told that unless we deal with systemic risk, the whole thing's going to come down. And there's got to be an end to it at some point. If that's the case, I don't think it's too much to ask for a company like AIG that would otherwise be out of business, for people there not to take advantage of the situation.
Well,
and Liddy,
Peter, let's get to your point.
Edward Liddy is no hero. He has certainly taken advantage of the situation. As a former Goldman Sachs director, he's done his duty to Goldman Sachs.
Amen, brother. And I'll tell you what else. The banks are being bailed out 100 cents on the dollar. The taxpayer is getting absolutely raked over the coals.
That's right. What about the common equity holders?
There's $750,000. Frankly,
Peter,
I don't find it whiny. I find it irrelevant. I find
well,
the real
what do you
issue
mean irrelevant?
with the
What happened at AIG with the common stockholders? It was a lot of small investors, and they were arbitrarily crushed by the government. Now, you could make the argument that they would have been screwed anyways, which is true, but wouldn't the people who are collecting these bonuses have been out of luck too if the company were allowed to fail? Yes.
Peter, do you think that anybody on Capitol Hill should perhaps have a salary reduction in the future should the stimulus package not work?
I think they should have a salary reduction regardless of what happens.
You do?
If the sun comes up tomorrow, they deserve a cut. And
okay, so
their public approval ratings are extremely low.
Let's say there is no formal vote, Peter. Are you willing to give up out of the kindness of your heart and out of your sense of duty your salary or any part of your salary because you yourself say that, you know, maybe this is not all being spent in the right way?
Well, I'm not working for a failing institution. You know, poor Jake DeSantis says he has nothing to do with the credit default swaps, and it may be true, but he worked for a company that's going under. What about all the people in the Arena Football League who now are out of jobs?
Jeff, let me ask you a question.
Donnie and I who are successful enough to actually pay taxes, we're bailing them out as well. We're paying for this.
One of the arguments, the kill what you eat on Wall Street, because it's a bigger discussion, obviously, in these bonuses, is I made $100 million for this company, so I'm entitled to $10 million or $20 million. That's flawed. People work at Procter & Gamble. They'll introduce a new shampoo. They could drop $1 billion to the bottom line. They don't walk in and go, I want a cut. They get a salary. They get incentives.
They don't say that, though. They negotiate it beforehand.
But the point is, it is not this automatic, I made $10 for the company. I'm a part owner. I get $3 cut in it.
You know what it is, Donnie?
It's
the industry you go into. People go into banking because they want to work hard, and in exchange for working hard and being smart, they'd like to be paid a lot of money. That's why they went into banking.
I know too many stupid people on Wall Street who make $10 million a year. And as a capitalist, I have a problem with that.
It's an alignment of interest with the shareholder. Remember that. Ultimately, AIG was a publicly held company. company. And for shareholders, you want to make the most money as you can. You're aligning the interests of the workers with the interests of the shareholders.
But if those interests are not aligned, there's no downside. You're right. That's the way it should be, but it's clearly not that way.
And shareholders of Citigroup. I didn't want to own Citigroup. I ended up owning it because I'm a taxpayer. It's a scam.
Our thanks out there to Peter.
Peter, thanks.
You're welcome.